Hey everybody, welcome to the Seed Butter channel. If this is your first time seeing me, welcome, and if you're a long-term Seed Butter fan, this is also kind of your first time seeing me because I'm doing this fun little format. This is a pseudo torso reveal, I guess, but I'm celebrating a very special milestone for the channel, which I'll talk about at the end of this video. And it partially inspired me to take this jump behind, I guess, in front of the camera, so I hope you enjoy it. With that all said, I've rambled quite a bit, and I'll just conclude by saying if you enjoyed this video, please show some love to support my small channel and consider joining our Discord, the link to which is in the description of this video. Also, I'm putting out this slightly shorter video because there's a huge piece of content on the way, my longest video yet actually, so please stay tuned for that if you enjoy this video. Make sure you're subbed so you can check that out. Now that you've eaten that YouTuber word salad, let's get into the very subject of this video. Today, I want to talk about my absolute favorite piece of analog horror ever. If you noticed the thumbnail of this video, you know that if I could describe this video with just 2 words, they would be almost and perfect. Why almost, you ask? Well, we'll get to that eventually. But the video in question comes from a project you've certainly heard of if you're an analog horror fan. The piece comes from the legendary Local 58 series, and it's probably not the one you think it is. Now, I would talk about Local 58, but the thing is, there are dozens of video essays on this project put out by YouTubers more qualified than me. I do recommend familiarizing yourself with the project by watching one of those videos if you're curious, but it's not necessary for this video right here. I'm making this video because I've wanted to talk about this piece for a very long time, but it wouldn't really fit in with any of my typical video formats besides just, well, talking, which is why I'm here like this. I'm not going to do a breakdown of the Local 58 series as a whole for a couple of reasons. The main one, and possibly most controversial take, is that I don't like Local 58. I think it's a bad series. I'm glad it happened, I support the creator, and I think it contains some awesome episodes and techniques which serve as pioneers for the genre, but that said, the series as a whole is not good. There's no discernible story, just a medium. Local 58 was awesome at demonstrating the potential of what can happen with a hijacked TV station, but you can watch all the videos you want, by the end of it you still wonder, what is this all about? Are the antagonists pranksters, terrorists, aliens? You don't know, and you really can't ever know. Now, a series doesn't need a storyline to be good, and for that reason I wish the creator behind Local 58 just made more standalone pieces, because some of the best content from this channel, such as You Are on the Fastest Available Route, really do stand well on their own. Anyways, let's just talk about the piece already. My favorite piece of analog horror ever is Contingency. It's a 3-minute video from the Local 58 channel and the second video uploaded. Technically, it's not the second video produced because this series actually started in 2015 off of YouTube and moved to YouTube eventually, but that's not relevant to the discussion. Contingency was uploaded in 2017 and has since amassed just over 4 million views, an incredible number and currently the greatest on the channel. I'm sure you've seen that video before, but I'm going to go ahead and play the whole thing with no commentary, and then I'll talk about why I love this piece just so much. I'm a bit scared to play the whole 3-minute video in its entirety because, but anyway, let's go. This video legitimately gives me chills. I think it's grounded in a terrifying reality which is respectful of the historical context and contains all sorts of horrible themes which are just executed perfectly. Well, almost perfectly. I want to do a frame-by-frame analysis of this video before I talk about what makes it so good on a macro level. Contingency starts with Local 58's programming announcements and end of broadcast day. Just the typical what's next for the channel that used to be a thing we had until TV guides. In the middle of the national anthem, which also used to play when TV channels shut off early in the mornings, another weird TV thing that doesn't exist today, the broadcast is interrupted. We then see a logo of a federal organization that doesn't exist in the real world, to our knowledge at least, titled the U.S. Department for the Preservation of American Dignity. Right off the bat, there's something interesting here. Really quickly, I'll give a TLDR of this video. It's a leaked copy of a tape where the government urges people to kill themselves because America is about to lose the war. We'll learn later on that this takes place in the middle of the Cold War. Now, I honestly wouldn't put it past the US government to do something like this. They did some crazy stuff, really crazy stuff in the 60s.
And remember, kids, the next time that somebody tells you the government wouldn't do that, oh yes they would.
If this happened in real life, it probably would be some Black Ops thing with no official documentation. But in this universe, it's a federal department with a logo giving credence to the idea that the American people knew about this agency. Now, extrapolating from that, it means that for some degree of time, Americans were well aware of the idea that a war might obliterate them, and they were slowly coming to terms with that reality, and also understanding that they might have to take drastic action, destroying their families and homes so that, presumably, the Soviets couldn't occupy them. In a world where this was the case, I'd imagine America plunging into total chaos. And let's talk about the logo itself for a second. This is a tiny detail, but something awesome about this video is that every detail is crucial. It shows a man and a woman, presumably to symbolize the family unit, standing on either side of a globe with an American flag draped over it, sort of symbolizing an American homogeny over the world. Then there's a sword and pen, a classic set of symbols, but frequently the phrase goes, the pen is mightier than the sword. But in this case, the sword is laid over the pen. This may sound stupid, and you may think I'm grabbing at strings, but it's just a cool little piece of symbolism. It is a tangent though, so let's just keep going. At the beginning of the message reel, we see some information about this contingency message. To my knowledge, none of these dates or codes reference anything important, besides the fact that the creator of this ARG, Chris Staub, mentioned that the code at the bottom was based off of actual military codes that would use hard-to-pronounce English words like Omaha to weed out spies. Other than that, these details aren't really important. On the next moment, we see a box for a publication date, indicating that this transmission may not have been thought through. At least there should have been some edits made like today's date. It could either mean that this is a mistake, or that the broadcast had to be put out so urgently that there just wasn't any time. Then, as the monologue shows up on screen as a distorted version of the national anthem plays, we're treated to the real horror. The realization is that America is completely defeated by her enemy. I find the line about occupying our streets really interesting because it suggests to me that this isn't a nuclear fallout situation. It's perhaps a full-scale invasion from the USSR, which is potentially even more terrifying. For those of you who don't know, the US is basically impossible to conventionally invade for a number of reasons, suggesting that the communists may have had some radical change in their capabilities, perhaps securing some sort of superweapon allowing them to pull off the impossible invasion. It also brings up the lesser likely but still possible scenario that we aren't dealing with the Russians in this case, but perhaps some other force that popped up in human history. Maybe even something alien. I tend to disbelieve this. I think the piece is written just to talk about war and the Cold War specifically, but there is still a possibility that that's what we're looking at. Americans are then called to act, asked to perform one last piece of service to their country. Ritualistic suicide as one last middle finger to the occupying forces. In an effort to spare the women and children from subjugation and the fighting males from complete and total obliteration, the government compels its citizens to destroy themselves with their families. Depending on your perspective, I guess this is a metal thing to do. The message is signed by the president himself, Lyndon B. Johnson, who claims that he's performed the same service he's asking everyone to do. This makes me think of two things. First of all, he's lying, or second of all, every single American ally was also destroyed in this conflict. It's common practice for leaders of occupied countries to flee, and I'd expect this from the president himself, but if every first world country fell, that wouldn't be possible. When the message from the president is over, the tape continues with more text displayed over red spider lilies, flowers that symbolize death. The message reiterates that it's an honor to perform this dreadful act for your country, and even suggests to you the best possible method of doing it. Then the message goes from suggesting to informing you that law enforcement has been commanded to ensure your compliance. So you mean to tell me that local police are going to execute their own citizens, the same ones they swore to protect? This again feels like a lie unless the government has pulled some MKUltra stuff on police officers to ensure their loyalty, which again, maybe this did happen. I mean, the US did so much wild stuff in the Cold War when we won. Imagine what they would have done if we'd started to lose. Then we learn about the victory position, the way the government asks you to present yourself so that when the communists march in, they'll be met with your bodies in this unified form of defiance. The worst part of this video pops up next. Children, infants, pets? I shouldn't have to tell you how terrifying that is. Now that we've covered the most horrible piece of this video, we're going to look at the other worst part of this video, which is the use of this garbage analog horror trope that makes me just want to puke all over. This one frame with the message, the 51st state is not a place. Oh, this is such a big deal to me because this message literally makes no sense. And I don't just mean it's strange, I mean it literally makes no sense, even within the context of this already creepy film. It buys into this god-awful analog horror trope where some creepy text pops up on a distorted screen and people just think that it's scary. I could literally make a compilation of this type of thing popping up in videos, and it never gets any scarier. It literally never works. I mean, if I interrupted my video by randomly saying, "Shit your pants," you wouldn't be scared, you'd be like, okay. So unless we're talking about Guam, the 51st state comment is just out of place. I make a lot of zany lore theories, and even I can't figure out what this is trying to say. I just don't get it. This really detracts from the video for me because it makes it seem less like the gold standard of analog horror to just another good piece of analog horror. That said, I'm being critical of this piece because I love it, and I do believe it's still the best piece of analog horror out there. I just think this is one mistake. Anyways, rant over. Then we get to the end of the video, the crazy twist, the realization that this was an accidental transmission. Sure, there were signs all along that this wasn't real, but the idea that this is fake is just as terrifying as it being real, for the simple reason that some people who saw this probably did follow through with it. Imagine the aftermath of the government accidentally telling people to do what they did in this video, and then retracting it, just saying, sorry, this was an accident. And knowing America, nobody would get arrested. There would just be infomercials 10 years later saying that if you killed yourself after watching this video, your family might be entitled to financial compensation. Local 58 states that this was a hoax hijacking, but the thing is, we see some info about the agency broadcast at the same time, with the two images competing. It appears that the government and Local 58 are both broadcasting at the same time, with Local 58 trying to shut it down, but the government's message still somewhat present. It mentions what to do if this is broadcast accidentally, ironically, cementing, at least in my mind, that the Department for the Preservation of American Dignity is a real group. Maybe it's not super well known or its true purpose isn't, but it is a real group in the Local 58 universe. And with that, friends, we reach the end of the video. I hope you agree with some of my conclusions as to why this video is so terrifying and honestly just amazing. It opens up the door to a world full of horrible things happening, but excels in showing, not telling. I think the format it comes in is also extremely true to the analog horror genre. It really does feel like you're watching some sort of tape from somebody who recorded a famous event decades after it happened. I gotta hand it to the creator for this one. I think this is an extremely well thought out piece of horror. Now that that's all said and done, I want to thank you for joining me today. I also hope you enjoyed this new format and you could deal with the terrible audio. Being in front of the camera and behind a mask is new to me, so I thought this was fun and I appreciate any of the critiques y'all have. Now, as far as announcements go, I mentioned something at the beginning of this video, and that's that this video is going up on the 2nd anniversary of the Seedbutter channel. That's right, it's now been 2 years since I uploaded my Iceberg on Just Cause 3, and I gotta say, a ton has changed since then. The channel has grown tremendously, and I'm so happy with the way it's turned out and how much support you guys show my videos. With that said, I really hope you'll consider subscribing so that we could push over that 10,000 sub mark, which would be awesome. On top of that, like I mentioned, there's a huge video coming up, so stay tuned for that. Finally, and then I promise I'm done rambling, I want to mention that I've recently created a Patreon for the channel. Right now, the only benefit I can offer for just $1 a month is a thank you at the end of each video, but there will be some exclusive content and updates on there eventually. If you even consider subscribing to that to help me dedicate more time to making videos, I would very much appreciate it. Now that that's all over with, I want to say goodnight and thank you. I hope to see you all again soon.